Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today I'm taking a look at the Astrology of July 2020. So it's a really big month, and as most of you know who watch my channel, you can check this video out, which is going to give you the overview for the month of July, or you can check out my rising sign horoscopes and check in on how these transits may affect your chart individually as the rising sign horoscopes sync up with the whole sign version of your chart. So they're according to elemental grouping. So and they both usually come out right around the first of the month. So be sure to check those out if you want something a little bit more personalized. This month is really the story of Capricorn. It's really the story of Saturn because we've got a lunar eclipse in Capricorn and just a big lineup of planets in Capricorn. But it's also the Cancer Capricorn axis in general and the cardinal signs because we've also got Mars in Aries now hanging out with Mercury this month. So let's go ahead and take a look and roll through the biggest transits of the month. As always, I don't look at every last transit. I focus on those that I think are going to be most significant and really tell the story of the month. So at the very beginning of the month, a couple of things happen. One of them is we have a lunar eclipse in the sign of Capricorn coming through on July 4th. Now, if you're in the United States, you know that this is the birth date of the United States. So it's a pretty big deal when the United States' birth chart or solar return features a lunar eclipse. Now, this lunar eclipse in Capricorn is, of course, lighting up the Cancer-Capricorn axis in general. So let's just draw a line across the chart so that we just kind of point that out. Now, when we're doing mundane astrology, we're not tethering these to house locations. We're talking purely about planetary interactions, planet sign interactions, in order to understand how everyone might be affected or the themes or trends that we might experience in a more general sense. Now, the Cancer Capricorn axis, I've spent a lot of time talking about recently. I recommend that you go back and listen to a talk that I did on the silvering of a solar eclipse in Cancer, because we are now coming to the full moon lunar eclipse of that same cycle. So that would be a really good video to go back and get a really in-depth take on the eclipse cycle. I'll also be doing a video specifically on the eclipse, so I'm going to give you the abbreviated version in the monthly overview. The gist of it is that, as you can see, the Cancer Capricorn axis is highlighted, and then a huge lineup of planets in Capricorn, with Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, being present. Now, when there are lunar eclipses, we're talking about a full moon, and full moons are like the blossoming of a cycle. That which was promised at the birth of a cycle is now manifest, is now made visible, is now apparent. When a lunar eclipse comes, it's generally an omen of significant changes that occur at the blossoming or harvesting moment of a cycle. It's in a cardinal sign, which makes it more dynamic and pivotal. Pivotal meaning that it's like reaching a, if you're walking around a rectangular room, it's one of those hard sort of 90-degree angles where you would just stop, turn, and completely head in the other direction. So you've got these hard turning points designated by the tropical or cardinal signs. Tropical, the word comes from the word tropos, which means to turn. And so there's a pivot point that everyone's doing this month. And that's because we've got these eclipses happening in cardinal signs. This lunar eclipse represents the culmination of something. Now, the culmination of something that's Saturnine. So what would that indicate? Well, with Capricorn, it's usually, remember, Capricorn is the domicile of Saturn and the exaltation of Mars. Mars is now in Aries, starting to square Cancer and Capricorn. And so you're thinking about hard work. You're thinking about competitive, driven, the kinds of results that come because you've put a lot of effort and energy and will and action trying to get something to work out the way that you want it to. And maybe having climbed or ascended up a long staircase of steps along the way, which takes a lot of time. Those are Saturn-Mars combination of qualities that Capricorn often displays. So rewards for hard work. But often the eclipse also means that things are being harvested that are not always easy. An eclipse, for example, can literally mean that some chapter or some chapter in your life is coming to a close, or something that you've been doing is now basically expiring. It's like that thing in your fridge reaches the expiration date and it starts to stink. It's like, so a lunar eclipse in Capricorn. Remember, Saturn is the sign of winter and death. a lot of things come to completion, and they not only completion, but they, that it's like that fight that you have in a relationship when you're dating someone and you go, that was it. That was the last straw. It's over now, right? You know that it can never go back because you just reached that turning point. That's a little bit of what a lunar eclipse in Saturn's sign is like. It's like, okay, deal done, or it's over. It's like we've just terminated the agreement, or we've come to the end of something. But the way that you come to the end of something with a lunar eclipse is really bright and full and dramatic and maybe difficult. Could be a very sobering moment that you experience, or a moment of, just getting that insight for seeing what something is at last, just laid bare before you, and just like, wow, that's what it is. Okay, now I know. And that was dramatic and hard. And there's a lot of time in history behind this event, but it also does mean a turning point. And the turning points of Saturn are not always easy. They're sobering. They require that we grow up or mature. But we now know something that we didn't. We feel a little wiser for the wear. On the other hand, again, hard work paying off. That feeling of a seasoned veteran that has earned their stripes. That's a lunar eclipse in Capricorn. And you can also think of the potential for there to be, things involving time and age and death and, kind of mature, wintry realizations. They're hard. They're the necessary, difficult lessons of life. That's the Saturnine quality of Capricorn. So I know it doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but remember, Jupiter and Pluto are in the mix, still pretty closely conjoined, which means that the potential for deep transformative catharsis and a reworking of our understanding of truth, or our beliefs or systems in our life that are meant to try to hold things together and provide us with some sense of vision, are also being transformed in the process. Now, like I said, we'll come back and talk more about that in an eclipse video that I'm doing. And you can go back to the solar eclipse in Cancer video that I did recently for a much deeper take on the whole Cancer Capricorn axis, which I'll touch on again briefly in a minute when I talk about a few other transits. Now, in the meantime, Mercury is still retrograde to start the month in Cancer. And by the 7th and 8th of the month, we're going to see Mercury in Cancer going through a square to Mars in Aries. Now, that's a little bit like, boiling water. You've got a very emotionally an emotional and moody Mercury right now, who can certainly deliver messages through, the emotional atmospheres around us. The feedback of environmental, the environment right now can be quite profound. And Mercury's square to Mars can also mean that the environment is charged with emotional intensity, or with some element of aggression. So you want to be careful that you're not letting your emotions boil over. Empathy is great, and Mercury in Cancer may step up the feeling of empathy, of really being able to feel what other people are going through. But then at the same time, there is the potential for reactivity. And that's the Mars component of this. So watch for a more emotionally charged mental and combative, verbal, communicative energy. And this is also the kind of thing where you want to be careful, especially with things like driving and transit and travel, because this energy is a little volatile when it comes to, say, if you are on the road and people are angry, or there's a traffic jam, and it's not the kind of time to flip someone off, or you know what I mean. Like, be careful of that. But also just be careful of combative, emotional, communicative energy around this time. At the same time, it's a very incisive and analytical energy, and can help you almost like get your study your emotions, especially around this time, 7th and the 8th, because they're going to be giving you like tells, like this is what's really going on. If you pay attention to your emotions and then analyze them reflectively, maybe more quietly, not in reactive, sort of, don't pour gasoline on the fire, don't turn up the burner if there's a pot of water already boiling. But taking time to reflect, you may find that you're able to rationally analyze what you're feeling passionate and fired up about. And that can be really helpful in order to get clear on the best way to act or move forward with something. It's just that dynamic of the big blowout, emotional fight that you don't want to get into around that time. So that's a pretty simple explanation. Let's go to the 12th and 13th. Mercury is going to turn direct. So at that point in time, Mercury is like, got something figured out. And if you go back, take a look at some of the Mercury retrograde videos that I did on this Mercury retrograde, pay attention to the house that Mercury is located in your whole sign house chart, because Mercury is at a turning point now. It's like, now I've got something figured out. I'm ready to integrate what I've been learning, or the lessons that I've been learning over this past couple of weeks. Now, later in the month, on the 27th, we're just going to flash forward a little bit and go to the 27th. Later in the month, Mercury is then going to draw back into the dynamic with Mars. So something you're learning around the beginning of the month, some lesson you're trying to integrate through this Mercury retrograde cycle, is going to come full circle with another square to Mars by the end of the month. So that same theme of the intensity of the mental energy of Mercury and Mars will come back around the 27th, 26th. What is it? Yeah, it's about 26th and 27th, let's say. You could go 26th to 28th, and you'd probably notice it around. So I'd really love to hear all of your stories about how you handle this energy this month, or how you see it manifesting. I would be really curious. I like hearing people's stories about these things. All right, so we go back, and the next thing that's happening, probably the big transit of the month other than the eclipse, is going to be this long series of oppositions that the sun goes through between the 12th and the 21st. And as this is happening, the sun is moving through oppositions to Jupiter in Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn, and Saturn in Capricorn. So the sun opposition to those three planets is really interesting, because the sun in Cancer, and this is that Cancer Capricorn axis again, the sun in Cancer is going to want to illuminate things that are more secretive, more emotional, more vulnerable, related to home, family, the past, ancestry. The Cancer sun energy wants to see the world through the lens of mystery, nostalgia, memory, and is a pretty emotionally in touch kind of sun that's going to illuminate emotional truths, and it's going to help us see the world in the silver light of the moon. So, and again, go back to that Cancer solar eclipse video that I did to go deeper into this axis in general. But that's the mood of the sun right now. It's about emotional truths. It's about ancestral truths. It's about soul truths that you can understand only through things like dreams, memories, reflection, moods, atmospheres. And then it's going to hit these oppositions to Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, all in the sign of Capricorn, which is the sign of Saturn, right? So Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn oppositions come through, and I'll just see if I can show you how they. So you're going to see the sun. There it goes. Like on the 15th, it goes right through the oppositions, and then you can see there by about the 20th, it's heading through the opposition with Saturn, and then by the 21st, it's through. Now, at the tail end of this, there's also going to be, just back this up just a little bit, you're going to see, I'll just circle it right here. There's the new moon in Cancer that comes through on right about the 20th as well. So, this is again, and this really is the transit of the month, because it's long, it's slow, and it's an opposition in cardinal signs. Now, an opposition in cardinal signs means it's pivotal. Again, it's dynamic. Again, just like the Aries, the Mars in Aries and the Mercury in Cancer, that the things that are coming up mentally and emotionally for that one are not only charged, but they lead to pivotal, dynamic, sudden turning points where you're pivoting sharply, and there's confrontation involved. That's the cardinality of the moment. Now you've got a new moon in Cancer's sign, again, after a new moon on the solstice that was an eclipse in Cancer. So more Cancerian energy, more of that emotional charge, more newness around the themes of home, family, the past, your inner emotional states, etc. And those are really being pronounced right now. They're really being they're taking center stage now. But at the same time, it's all opposing all of these energies in Capricorn. And so and what is the Capricorn message? The Capricorn message is, set aside the past, set aside your family connection, set aside your emotions, sort of strip back and pull away the emotional attachments that you have, or the physical attachments that you have, or those needs that you have. And there's more of a sense of being pulling back to the most basic, the most threadbare, the most stoic, and maybe the most practical, or the most mature and sobering level of experience, or those insights that help you to grow up and pull away from unhealthy emotional attachments. But either way, there is some, you could say that the Cancer Capricorn axis is when it's so strong like this, it delivers almost like an emotional and psychological initiation, where we get, if you're too cold-hearted, you get warmer through these transits, because things happen that wake you up emotionally, and they're really pivotal, and they just really tear your heart open sometimes. On the other hand, if you tend to be really needy and almost childlike and sort of regressive, these transits tend to come along and say, become more adult-like, become serious, become sober, detach from the things that are, maybe more, in a Cancerian sense, more needy. So that's kind of the sort of classic way in which we grow through the Cancer Capricorn axis. On the other hand, you're also talking about the moon versus Saturn, and that's also about the things that you feel are worth your time, your energy, your sweat, your blood, your sacrifice, your love. What is really worth your emotional attention, and where do you feel dried up? Where do you feel like what you're giving yourself to is hollow or dead or wintry, or somehow, it's depressive? And those things can come up between the Cancer Capricorn axis as well. The other thing that happens is our like insights into the sun. Remember, the sun represents clarity and truth, and it was called the organ of the soul's perception. And so the sun's delivering these insights through the dichotomy with Saturn, who is the Lord of darkness. So where there is loss, where there is death, where there is winter, where there is difficulty, hardship, time, patience, endurance, a feeling of being restricted, that we want to try to fill those spaces this month with greater devotion. It's like things may be really hard or difficult or kind of serious this month, but that doesn't mean we can't fill them with a nurturing, sensitive, thoughtful, emotionally present energy. It's kind of like, when it's winter outside, it's really important to have, you can imagine in sort of older times that it would be really important to have a warm hearth fire, have warm soup. It's sort of like the chicken. You guys remember those books, Chicken Soup for the Soul? It's like that. It's like, this month you may need, like, the conditions may be very wintry, but that doesn't mean that you're tasked with figuring out how to cook some chicken soup for the soul in the midst of it. So it's a soulful month. It's a hard month at the same time. It's an emotional month, and it's also a month where, illusions and emotional immaturities are stripped away. So that back and forth between Cancer and Capricorn is really pronounced. And you're also going to notice that the insights that you have are going to be, insights that come across, like realizations and illuminations. You just start to understand something or see something, and those insights that really move you forward in life will come through these dichotomies, and that's the sun opposing all these things. It can also be a very difficult time for leaders, kings, CEOs, fathers, heads of state. The sun represents that central figure, whether the ego death, or it can be the death of a leader or a king or a queen or CEO. Anyone who's like a central head of an organization, or president or a king or something like that, can be potentially difficult karma around fathers and fathering, and things like that as well. So that is the big transit of the month. I hope I've done an okay job describing it from multiple angles, but please leave me your comments and tell me how have you experienced the Capricorn axis. It's really helpful to see other people sharing those insights, and then if you read through the comments, you often pick up 3 or 4 other really nice gems from folks out there who are watching. The new moon in Cancer participates in all of that around July 20th. Now, the last transit of the month that I have my eye on for July is going to happen right around the 26th and 27th. And that's, look, wow, it's been a while, but here she is again, Venus and Neptune. Now we go back, you have to go all the way back into April and May when Venus first started applying to the square with Neptune, squared Neptune, turned retrograde, went back, backward, and is now coming all the way back. So it's really interesting to see this dynamic, playing out again. I'm really curious to see, because it's kind of bringing an echo back from April and May. We'll look very carefully at the Gemini and Pisces area or signs in your whole sign houses in your chart, because it's those houses and the topics that will get activated. Okay, so Venus and Neptune brings that aura of romance, beauty, otherworldliness, imagination, and dreams, especially into the realm of relationships, romance, art, film. It's a nice time to enjoy almost like idyllic times with friends, or, it's a good time for, I'm trying to think of what, oh yeah. So the first time that this happened, this transit came around, I ended up showing my daughters a bunch of Miyazaki films. I don't know if you guys know him, but I think I'm saying his name right. But Spirited Away, Ponyo, My Neighbor Totoro, these are like awesome anime movies. And it was just like this magical, like little world that we went into with my girls. So, that was for me, that was a really cool part of the Venus Neptune dynamic, was just this kind of cinematic dreamscape of anime that I went into with my girls. Very Venus and Gemini square Neptune. But it can be also about delusion, illusion, intoxication, the glamour that seduces, sleight of hand, deception, and all sorts of intrigues that can come up in relationships. You do have to be careful to be very discriminating and sort of discerning. I had a very high number, like in the week that happened. I think like probably every other client that I saw was going through something involving a triangle in love, or polyamory, or someone who wanted an open relationship, or like this, that Venus in Gemini is very flirtatious and likes multiplicity. And so there can also be this way in which your curiosity wants to explore in multiple different directions, but be careful that you're, just doing everything honestly, because the Venus Neptune dynamic can also imply a certain level of like hiddenness or deceit or deception. But Venus Neptune can also imply that there's just almost like an artistic, imaginative, inspiring aura around for a little bit. I mean, Venus Neptune is great for like, dates, or, there was a Venus Neptune dynamic present when there was a friend of ours who got married. They got married at Disney World. There was a Venus Neptune dynamic, and it was like perfectly, it was like exactly what I imagined taking a little kid, like my own child, for the first time to Disney World. And so it was all very, very magical, but also the whole time I was like trying to help my child navigate like the ultra consumerist trap that place is. It's like crack for like commercials and like corn syrup, and just I can't even like. So it was just this weird dichotomy between like, kind of magical and imaginative, and also like this kind of consumerist head screw. Anyway, so that's the Venus Neptune dynamic. You see that coming back around by like the 26th into the 27th. So watch for that towards the end of the month, kind of coming back. And, it's really interesting that, it's like a long time to have Venus in one sign. So Venus in Gemini all the way until like the 6th of August, I think it is. So still have a little ways with Venus to go, even by the end of the month. All right, well, that is what I have for all of you for the month of July. I would love to hear from you. Again, like I said, I always like to hear your stories, hear what you're going through. It's important, if you want to get the most out of the video like this, to watch it now, watch it on the 15th, watch it toward the end of the month. If you come back to it a few times and reflect with a journal, you're going to get a lot more. Your astrology is going to work for you and start becoming a more important part of your everyday spiritual experience. So I highly recommend it. Meanwhile, I hope that you guys have a great month of July. Please stay in touch as the month goes on, especially over that eclipse. And I'll be sure to be, there'll be videos out on just about every one of the transits that I went through individually. So we'll be revisiting all of them. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.